because all they're doing is they're worried about being annoying and winning. And somehow lost in the middle of all of that is a message for disaffected voters and how their lives can be made better if they latch on to the Democratic platform and some of the candidates. You know, why not talk about candidates who have ideas? Because it is a pretty shallow pond. And Bernie's absolutely right. If all they're doing is crying impeachment at every turn, and that's their form of resistance, it's going to be a losing strategy. And I think if there's anything that the 2016 election showed us, it's that you have to have ideas, you have to have solutions, and you have to be prepared to make good on them.
And you have to have a message. That's been the problem all along. That was the problem for Hillary Clinton. There's still no message, and if your message is impeachment, resist, that's not going to win elections. That's not going to bring the people out to vote. What are you going to do for them? They're still having a hard time coming up with that. Tom Perez certainly isn't getting that message out.
Yeah, absolutely. No! Doesn't get someone elected. I mean, nowhere in that message is the person that you're supposed to vote for. No! Doesn't get anyone elected. I mean, there's nothing in there about who you should vote for instead. And they've got to put forward, I mean, that's where the real problem comes in, is where does the party turn? Do they turn to someone more moderate? And this is always the case, whether you're talking about Democrats or Republicans after a loss. Do you go moderate, or do you appeal to the people who had energy, who were out there, and who felt cheated by the last election, like the Bernie Sanders folks? I don't know how you get those two sides together to get behind one person. That was the problem in the first place, and that's still the problem even with resistance.
Well, there's a subdivision within the Democratic Party, and there's a fight for this progressive soul. And, you know, the Center for American Progress had their ideas conference and conveniently left Bernie Sanders off the stage. And you know, they invited, you know, new progressives. You know, they're not really new. It's sort of warmed over curdled milk with Elizabeth Warren and Cory Booker. But they're trying very hard to have a coup within the progressive side of the Democratic Party and push Bernie out. But he's the only one who is able to get people not only excited, but mobilized.
But not you, Bernie. We're not trying to push you out.
And he's, no, and the guy's, he's a dinosaur, so he's pushing 80. But look, they have a message. It's just that it doesn't sell. Open borders, social justice, transgender bathrooms. That's not going to get the former Obama voters back in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. They have a message. They have to keep it. They have to kind of conceal it, actually, because it's a distasteful message to the people that matter.
Obviously, part of the resist movement is resisting any new blood. That's part of the problem, too, right? There's not exactly a deep bench.
There were a bunch of people running for the head of the DNC, and there was a gentleman who was a local Ohio, I believe, state senator, and I'm sorry, I forgot his name.
Tim Ryan?
It was Tim Ryan's one of them. There's another person. And I bring this person up because he was specifically referenced to me as someone, a Democratic friend of mine who's been in Democratic politics a long time, wants to see as the wave of the future. And talking to her about Bernie Sanders and these progressives, you get the same reaction as you do from me. And that this is not what we want for the future. It's not going to work. It's not going to win over these voters that President Trump has won over so handily, switched over. And it's going to be interesting to see if they go full radical socialist or actually try and meet someplace in the middle going
Scary
forward.
to think that that's the decision that has to be made.
All right, this topic certainly isn't going to go away, but despite recent controversies for the White House, President Trump's campaign committee announcing what it calls a record one-day fundraising haul since the election. The committee says that along with its joint fundraising committee with the RNC, it raised $314,000 on May 17th, the same day the Justice Department named a special counsel in the Russia probe. The campaign saying, quote, "The American people sent President Trump to Washington not to get along with the establishment, but to repair the damage done to our economy and our prestige around the world by their policies and practices. This is why he continues to fight for the people, and they continue to support him stronger than ever before." And when it comes to down ballot races in the next year's midterms, the National Republican Congressional Committee announcing 4 straight months of record fundraising to start the year. A total of $46 million, doubling what it raised the first 4 months of 2015. So Bernard McGurk, no enthusiasm problem here right now.
No, listen, the base loves him. I still love him. He fights back. He punches back, punches in the teeth. He punches hard. We love that. He's been successful. I mean, the wall isn't up yet, of course. It's only 4 months. But everything else that he does, the overseas trip was a success. He's tried with the travel ban that everybody still supports. It's looking more and more like a great idea at this point. So, yeah, the base is still there. And what's the alternative anyway? Yeah. No, I'm very happy with, as a typical base guy, I'm very happy with
There's something else you left out there, and that's the economy.
That's
so
right.
many are judging him based on his improvement of the U.S. economy. We look at a Dow that's still hovering around 21,000 record highs. You look at the unemployment reports that have come out showing unemployment in this country is dropping. There's a lot of positive signs that what he is doing and policies that he's implementing are good for the economy, and he is being judged on that.
I think it's interesting. So if you look at this, it's kind of like, so once again, the polls are wrong. So the polls come out, and every day you see a new poll that says President Trump is less popular with the people who voted for him than ever before. But then what really counts? Where people spend their money. Oh, all of a sudden he's raised all this money. It's just like before the election when they're like, polls, he's going to get hammered, and then you come through, what really counts? How you vote. And he won. It's that same thing where people still are not comfortable saying out loud that they support what he's doing, because you still get vilified in public in so many different places, but in the ways that really matter, that can be quantified, that count, they are supporting him. To me, this reminds me of the polls before the election.
I don't know. I think that fundraising doesn't mean as much as it used to, and I think Hillary Clinton proved that in 2016. So although Republicans are raising money, they still, to Sandra's point, have a lot to prove where it counts most, and that's not only with the economy, but with tax reform. So this party really has to figure out its identity and heal some of those chasms. So, all the various sides in the Republican Party can come together and figure out how best to make the economy work. And that's through, not only some tax cuts and not only reducing some of the brackets, but real, honest-to-goodness tax reform that's been decades in the waiting. If they can do that and really get the economy going, that's going to be a lot more effective.
And obviously including
fundraising,
corporate tax
reform. And we love that he, to me anyway, he honks off all the people that we dislike, and we like that. We like that a lot.
He honks them off.
Well, I was going to use the P word.
Oh.
Yes, but I don't want to say that here.
But Kennedy is right that we shouldn't get too comfortable. There's a historical precedent that you lose seats in the House. I think every modern president except Bush after 9/11, this happens for. So don't underestimate the fact that there still is anti-momentum. Is it enough to win the White House in 2020? I don't think so. Is it enough to maybe catch a few congressional seats? Yes, I believe so. And I agree with you that it's following the money sets another historical precedence up until Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
And obviously coming off of his first foreign trip that is being viewed as a huge success, that's going to probably put in place some much-needed momentum back in Washington for the president.
And people hate the media, and the media is out to get him, and people hate that, and they see that, and so they dig in. They dig in big time. Look, President Trump can cure cancer, and the headline the next day in the Washington Post and the graphic on CNN would be President Trump putting doctors out of business. And people know that. They know that, and they hate the media, and it almost doesn't matter what Trump does or doesn't do policy-wise, and he's doing everything right, from what I can see. But they just like the fact that he's angering the right people.
He also has a deeply dedicated base, as you are a great example of here on the couch, who are going to give him a lot of leeway, a lot of time to get his agenda through. And I think some of the people on the left underestimate just how strong of a following he has, just how committed they are. And just because they're reacting impulsively to every controversy, it doesn't mean that his base will as well.
Trump viciously attacks cancer unfairly. That would be the headline. I love it.
Okay, college commencements are around the country, are pretty much wrapped up. And one thing we did not hear much about amid the pomp and circumstance was politics and the president. What our institutions of higher learning are so afraid of and why. Plus, the Democratic 2020 field already coming into focus, the familiar face leading a hypothetical matchup against President Trump, and what that means for the party.
4 months into the Trump presidency, but a possible 2020 Democratic field is already coming into focus. A recent poll by a left-leaning outlet shows former VP Joe Biden with the biggest edge in a hypothetical matchup against President Trump, with a 14-point lead. In a private speech recently, Biden hedging yet again, saying he could run in 2020, but probably wouldn't. And some other Democrats being floated as possible contenders were on display at a conference held by the liberal think tank Center for American Progress, and they laid it on thick when it came to bashing the president. Here's Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Now is the time to remind him our intelligence secrets are not gossip, and that his personal desire to impress his Russian buddies does not outweigh the safety, security, and lives of Americans and our allies. Now is the time to remind him that in this country, no one is above the law, including the President of the United States. It is time to resist. It is time to fight back.
There you have it. Some also looking to New Jersey Senator. All right, I feel, Bernie, like I need to ask you, is this the right strategy? Based on the conversation we had to start off the show, is that going to win elections?
Being shrill and very histrionic. I mean, Cory Booker comes off as one hell of a drama queen right there, and not a very good one either. I don't think he's going to win an Emmy for that performance. But look, no, it's not. Elizabeth Warren, I maintain that she helped get Trump elected when she campaigned for Hillary Clinton, and she was yelling at the voters. And by the way, let's not forget she's a proven liar about her ethnicity when she got into her job at Harvard. Remember that. So that if they want to put her up as the front person for the Democratic Party, God bless, go ahead. And Cory Booker, he takes more money from Wall Street than all the senators in the whole Senate, the 100 Senate. He takes the most money from Wall Street. This guy, he's a sellout and he's a phony.
Kennedy, what did you make of Elizabeth Warren's words and how she said them? I think she brought her finger out at one point, as if that lends more credence to her message.
I think it's very entertaining. I mean, she's a very condescending politician, and it just goes to show, you know, this faction of the Democratic Party, of the statists, they happen to be the most controlling. And she's one of those people who, she's obviously a very smart person, and there are times where she's very good at articulating her deeply held beliefs. The unfortunate thing is when people like that get into power, they don't trust you. They see everyone else as being beneath them, and they're intellectual inferior. Therefore, they have to tell you how to run your life, whether that's healthcare or the economy. It's a very, very overbearing and overwrought form of government.
Megan?
You know, when I watch Elizabeth Warren...
I mean that in a good way.
Totally a good way. You know, when I take away the ideology and the fact that I think she's a complete and total radical, and I actually think she's dangerous for this country, take that away. I thought that about President Obama as well. But when he spoke, he had a charm and a way that he gave speeches that made people feel comforted and inspired. She does not have this. This is not a gender thing before my Twitter explodes about this, but she is hysterical. She is overly emotional, and she's saying things in a way, like you said, Kennedy, that is condescending to the average voter. I know better than you. I'm a Harvard professor. I live in Massachusetts. I'm going to tell you how to live your life. I'm going to tell you how it's done. And at a certain point, you have to become a real politician as well. And I'd love to see her at the Iowa State Fair trying to eat a hot dog on a stick, talk to an average Iowan. I would pay tons of money to watch that happen, because I'm telling you, it's going to be a disaster. And at a certain point, some of these liberals are going to have to start talking to the heartland, and I just don't see how it works.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it always comes back to the economy. It always comes back to everybody's wallet, and that's what determines the election. We saw this last time around. I mean, it was that you can't trick people into what's going on in their own bank account, into what's going on in their lives, into whether they believe their kids are going to have a better future, can find a job if things have gotten better or things have gotten worse over the past 4/8 years. So I think it's entirely in President Trump's control to force through the things that he said he was going to do, like tax reform, like health care reform, all these things to make people's lives financially better, and it's on his shoulders that next election.
But talk to me about Joe Biden. Is that a reality?
No, it's like a unicorn fantasy of him running for president and saving the party. And the same kind of Democrats that don't like Elizabeth Warren have this alternate reality where he ran and he beat President Trump. Maybe that could have happened. I don't know.
But he matches up the best in a hypothetical race.
But he's still too, I say this with respect, he's still too old. He's still associated with an administration past, which led to the rise of President Trump. I just don't see it.
Yeah, he's very likable, of course. But once you dig in deep and they start, Oppo research and all that stuff with the plagiarizing from the past, and he has to start explaining things. I think his numbers will come way, way down. Plus, he's getting up there. He is too old. Let's face it. And Elizabeth Warren, she's a radical.
Come on,
a radical from Harvard, and we know what happens on campus, academia, with the boycott Israel, the anti-free speech. I wouldn't be surprised if she has posters of Mumia Abu-Jamal in her professor's
Better
office.
Than that, I hear
Harvard.
she has a tattoo.
Yeah, you can't trust anyone from Harvard.
Maybe that too.
We have to leave it there. Happy Memorial Day, everyone. Well, the president promising to get illegal immigration under control. Now arrests of illegals spiking big time, up 150% among a certain group. And it's sparking controversy. We will debate on the couch next.
Well, hello and welcome back. Candidate Trump and President Trump both vowing to get illegal immigration under control, and a recent report saying federal stats show a nearly 40% uptick in immigration-related arrests just since January. The president had softened his tone somewhat, saying the focus would be on deporting those who committed violent crimes. But the biggest spike in these latest numbers are arrests of non-violent illegals. That is up 150%. Critics say resources should focus on dangerous illegals, and that targeting others not only has a chilling effect on reporting crimes, but also breaks up families. But Immigration and Customs saying in a statement, quote, as Secretary Kelly has made clear, ICE will no longer exempt classes or categories of removable aliens from potential enforcement. All of those in violation of the immigration laws may be subject to immigration arrest, detention, and if found removable by final order, removal from the United States. So, Bernie, this is obviously a big shift in policy. And in places like Colorado and Utah, where unemployment is so low, they're having a hard time filling jobs and growing businesses.
Well, that'll only make wages go up, I think, for legal Americans. I believe. I'm not an economic major in college. You ladies are. However, I would also say this. Nonviolent crimes also include pedophilia. They include being members of the gang members, being a member of a violent gang. So stuff like that. I'm sure they're focusing on people who have criminal-related conduct. In fact, the L.A. Times, this is the L.A. Times, Trump's orders instruct federal agents to deport not only those convicted of crimes, but also those who are in charge, but are believed to have committed, quote, acts that constitute a chargeable criminal offense, unquote. So that's what their focus is. It's not to get the nice people who are law-abiding, who want to work hard, make money, who have been here for years. It's to get these people.
Yeah, but you know, in Arizona, obviously you deal and meet a lot of people whose families have been here for generations. And, you know, what do they have to say about this sort of enforcement of immigration laws?
Well, the first thing I want to say is this number, 40%, we are living in Trump's America. This is the cornerstone of his campaign promise when he was running for president. No one should be surprised by the fact that there's an uptick in arrests. I will say, obviously, I think most rational Americans want there to be a focus on gang members, people who have committed serious crimes, drug lords, people like that. That should be the first priority in deportations. But hardline immigration, I do think that and the economy is what won President Trump the White House. And this is a very emotional issue. And it's an issue that I have never seen more protesting, more polarization within communities over specifically this. This is what he ran on. This is what he won on. Whether or not you agree with it or not, obviously he's at least keeping up with what he promised.
And coming off of last week's terrorist attack in Manchester, you wonder if the president is going to see more support behind some of these things that have been so criticized, even by some on the left, whether it's the ban or the wall, whether he'll be able to pick up more momentum there.
But what about a labor shortage and prohibition? Because when you make something illegal, it forces people into criminal activity. You know, maybe this is a good time to talk about some of our immigration laws so more people aren't encouraged to break the law and get into the country illegally.
No, it's absolutely true. And I think that from a labor perspective, there have been so many people who have said it makes sense that if you just really enforced E-Verify and you made people who are hiring people verify that they were, you know, hiring people who were here legally, and then you also followed up with some sort of fine for a company or a person who broke that law, that would make it, you know, a financial disincentive and to keep doing that. Because as long as there are jobs luring people here quickly, then it's going to continue. But there are a lot of, I mean, it's not that we don't want people to come to this country. I mean, as somebody who studies the economy, the more people you have, you know, the more more people consume, the more labor there is, the more the economy grows. That's all good stuff. We just have to know who's coming in.
And the better the economy, the more immigration you have to fill some of those jobs, which businesses can't find enough bodies in certain states.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can't have open borders in a social welfare state.
No,
I mean,
absolutely
that's really
not.
what we're bucking up against.
Yes.
And rather than looking at this idea, you can't have people coming for free services that taxpayers are paying for.
That's absolutely
not right, and it doesn't help the economy or anyone here.
Very well said.
Smarty pants.
Yeah.
All right. I love that. Let's end the show now.
All right, well, college graduation speakers admit to steering clear of mentioning President Trump and politics in general in their commencement addresses this year. Is that a smart move, or does this reveal a bigger problem with talking politics on college campuses?
If you plan to attend any college graduation ceremony this year, you may well be entering a Trump-free zone. The majority of commencement speakers say they are avoiding any mention of the president or party politics in addressing graduates this season. One speaker telling USA Today, quote, anybody whose commencement speech could be put on the editorial page of a newspaper doesn't understand the job. President Trump gave 2 commencement addresses this year at Liberty University and the Coast Guard Academy, but Notre Dame broke its tradition of inviting newly inaugurated presidents after a student-faculty petition demanded that President Trump not be asked. When Vice President Pence spoke instead, some students walked out. I don't know about that, but Kenny, I'll ask you. I do like the idea of the commencement speakers steering away from politics. Don't make it about politics, because inevitably you offend someone. It's supposed to be a day of celebration, of growth.
And very few of these people will go into politics, and even fewer will become president.
Right.
And now that we're getting past commencement season, it has become so exhausting because so many speakers, particularly conservative speakers, are disinvited from these events. And I think on so many campuses, there has to be political fatigue from all of the uprising and all of the rests and all of the student protests and all of the safe spaces and all of the social justice advocates at places like University of Arizona and my alma mater, UCLA.
Yeah.
So, maybe commencement speeches need to be the handing out of graham crackers and masks so everyone can just nap and take a break, not only from politics, but from awakeness.
Can I tell you why getting rid of politics doesn't work? My commencement speaker when I graduated from Columbia was Matthew Fox, the actor from the show Lost. And very handsome man. He was protested, and there was complaints in the Spectator at Columbia, and he actually brought it up during
instead.
They just didn't think that he was basically up to the caliber of being a commencement speaker, and it has stuck with me for a long time because I remember thinking, and I graduated from college 10 years ago. This is not a recent.
You thought you got gypped?
And his speech was actually, he was saying, I'm not going to apologize for being a person who's part of pop culture. I'm not going to apologize for my success as an actor. Basically lecturing the commencement or the attendees that it's okay to have different kind of speakers giving their perspective. But if Matthew Fox gets you all riled up, then I just don't know who. No disrespect to him, but he's not a political person.
I don't know. Can I take the other side of this? Maybe it's good to leave politics out. Maybe it's good to. I attended a commencement ceremony over the weekend. My niece. Congratulations. Thank you. And I thought it was beautiful. And the discussion was about the economy and where these students were going. They highlighted the places these kids have been and where they're going. And it was maybe it's an opportunity.
But Matthew Fox is not political, and people were still angry and protesting. So
it should absolutely be inspirational.
Inspirational. That's the point.
You can't polarize people. It's not fair.
Yeah.
It's not right. I gave a commencement address last weekend at Rikers Island.
You did.
And I just said, listen, man, just stop what you're doing, and you can be me one day. Look, I was here. I was once there. No. It has to be, stay away from the politics. At a commencement address, I'm sure Mike Pence, when he went up there, gave an inspirational address, didn't start saying, listen, we're going to cut, we're going to slash spending. He gave an inspirational speech.
Yeah.
It's just that he was Mike Pence, and the little snowflakes couldn't handle the fact of who he was.
I would get so bummed if that's how everyone remembered my commencement.
Me too.
With people walking out.
Yeah, no, totally.
Like, you want to remember what the speaker had to say.
Yeah.
You want to remember what the day meant to you, and that's all.
I wanted to remember looking at my parents up in the audience, thinking how proud they were of me.
I was 38 weeks pregnant.
LSU, baby.
Oh, wow. The gown probably covered the whole entire thing. So you were all good.
I don't think there's no speaker that's good enough for college students. There's no one that's good enough, unless you're Elizabeth Warren. That's it. Or Bernie Sanders.
But see, we would enjoy them. I think the whole point, I mean, we all do a lot of speaking, and the point of like that big keynote speaker is they're supposed to come out and like really inspire you to think about your life and to reach for higher goals. And in general, you know, you put somebody out there who's overcome some great obstacle and can talk about their lives, how they did it, and they can inspire others to reach for the stars. That's supposed to be the idea. Maybe we just don't have enough of those people.
You know who had the best speech was John Waters. And he put his speech in a great book. Little mustache.
Right on. All right, college freshmen appear to be more politically polarized than ever before. Just over 42% of college freshmen characterize their political views as middle of the road, the lowest share ever recorded in the 50-year history of the American Freshman Survey. It polled more than 100,000 first-time, full-time students who started at nearly 200 U.S. colleges in the fall of 2016. More than 35% said they were liberal or far left, while just over 22% said they were conservative or far right. And last year's heated presidential election appears to have played a role in the polarization. 46% of those polled said keeping up with political affairs is very important or essential to them, the highest rate since 1990. You know, Kennedy, this is a topic I wanted to talk to you about. For whatever reason, we didn't get into it on the show. Maxine Waters presented an award at the MTV Video Music Awards, and I think she was giving the Resistance Award or something like that. Extremely leftist politician being showcased on a channel he used to work with, a lot of influence to the youth of America. So when we see these statistics that coming out of the gate, college students who are freshmen, by the way, children, thinking that they're already far left or they're already liberal, isn't it an argument that we are radicalizing the youth of America?
Absolutely. I mean, it is a pure indoctrination process. And, you know, that's why I'm a firm believer that maybe you should wait a few years and get a job and figure out what you really want to do before you go to college and subject yourself to that. Because, you know, not only is there no academic or intellectual free market, there's no economic free market in college. And what surprised me was 22% of incoming freshmen consider themselves to be conservative.
Yeah, that's
because there's so much indoctrination. I was actually surprised by that number.
That's what stuck out for me as well. As I was looking at that, I'm like, wow, 22%. That's amazing. I didn't think any young people identified as conservative or far right at all. I thought that was staggering.
And like with the poll, the Trump polls, the presidential polls before the election, I'm sure there's a lot of people, a lot of kids that are afraid to say that they're conservative. So the number's probably higher there. And I would say, it's polarized. But at my daughter's graduation a couple of weeks ago at SUNY Cortland, the kids are not all snowflakes. There's some kids out there who are actually have a mind of their own, and you know, they go along with these radical professors, and they say what they think the radical professor wants to hear, but they don't actually believe it. And there were actually people at my daughter's graduation who got to thank their parents and somebody else, and they were I'd like to thank my parents and President Trump. There were several of those at the grad, and they actually had to make that announcement, much to the mortification of the people in the audience.
I felt like there was one thing left out of this survey, and that was I don't know. I mean, how many college freshmen really don't know their views or know which party they align with more? I mean, I really do think there's I mean, you're extremely vulnerable at that age, too, to what your professors are saying to you or what you're reading in the media. And obviously, everybody's online. They're on Facebook. So,
But you have people standing in front of you that you look up to saying, everything you know is wrong. Your parents are wrong. And that's what a lot of
some of them, they're so oblivious to the fact that some kids might not agree with them and might be actually re-rolling tape or going home and saying, listen, you know, this nutty professor's telling me. They're oblivious to the fact that kids might be thinking that.
No, that's so true. I was out in Manhattan recently, and somebody came out to me who was a college student, and she said, I know you, you know, and I said, oh, yeah, I live in the neighborhood. She said, no, you're on Fox. And I was so surprised because she was, you know, young girl. She said she's a freshman in college here in New York City, and that she's basically totally undercover. You know, she said, nobody knows that I'm conservative. I don't approve of social welfare state. I think we have to go out and do things for ourselves. Our professors are telling us all these different things that she goes, I pretend to go along with it in class because I want to get the grade and I don't want to be ostracized, but I watch you guys every day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really sad, isn't it?
Well,
My niece wrote a paper about, in Oregon, they're talking about free community college. And, she wrote a paper saying it's not a great idea because it takes away from four-year colleges, and her professor made her go home and rewrite it.
Wow.
Because he didn't like the conclusion that she came to, that, perhaps there might be a market base.
And she said what?
I'm not going to.
I think she called.
I can't remember. I was so mad about that part of it.
I think she called Aunt Kennedy. Got her involved in it.
Nope, here it is. Grade it.
Aunt Kennedy's going to come to class, tell them all about the welfare state.
Make me.
All right, we've got to move on. A new survey shows many couples are deciding not all things should be equal, at least when it comes to money. But is it exposing a major trust deficit? We'll talk about it. Plus, a surprising revelation on why many couples are calling it quits, and it's not about money or cheating. Next, the one topic couples may want to avoid discussing at today's barbecue or risk a summer breakup.
Forget about money or family disputes. It may actually be politics that's driving many couples apart these days. A new study from Wakefield Research finds that disagreements over President Trump are starting to have a major impact on people's romantic lives. 1 in 10 couples, both married and not, report splitting up due to arguments about President Trump. And among millennials, that number rises to 22%. 42% of millennials say they have argued with their partner more than ever about politics, and nearly 33% of them overall say arguments over the president have negatively impacted their relationship. I don't know where to begin with this.
I can start with Bernie.
Yeah, well,
Bernie, do you argue with your wife about politics?
Well, occasionally we don't argue about it, but I will say this: that the first time I voted in the presidential election was for Ronald Reagan in 1980, and I had a girlfriend, very liberal family, and she almost broke up with me. She almost did. So this is not anything brand new out there, but Trump is more polarizing. With her, it ended.
Ask about your wife and talk about your girlfriend. I hope your wife's not watching.
No, but I mean, I've been married for 25 years. So
Congratulations.
I have a beautiful wife, and no, we don't argue about politics. We discuss it.
You always speak so fondly of her, so we love her. Megan, your comment, please.
I'm in a serious relationship with a very conservative man, and I used to try and date liberals and independents for a long time, and it never worked. So I actually find ideology in politics has actually been a big benefit in my relationship. It's just my personal where I'm at. I think politics plays an important role in how you view the world and ultimately possibly how you would raise children, how you would just coexist. So for me, I like being with someone who's politically like-minded to me.
I totally agree with that. I actually think that if you care about politics and you're pretty invested, you have some very fundamental beliefs that align with your party. That I don't know how you raise children with somebody that you disagree with so much about the role of government in your life. Freedom of religion. There are so many different things. I don't know. I don't know how you would necessarily. It would be difficult if you disagreed and you tried to then agree on how to manage your money, on how to raise your children. It seems like it would be tough.
Well, there's a couple of different religious affiliations that make it work, so it's not hard to do.
Look at Carville and Madeline. That worked out.
I think there is a possibility. I think it can be super hot. Because enough fights about it. That's gonna be like, but what's really interesting? I talk to my kids a lot about politics, and they have so many arguments at school.
Yeah,
it's like relationships aren't the only place where this president tends to be divisive. And I think that a lot of kids in elementary school and middle school have found out the same thing that people in high school and college have found out, that it's really fun to support the president just because it makes people so mad.
Let me tell you something. If hopefully you're not in a marriage, but if you're in a relationship and you're breaking up over arguments about President Trump, probably could you find out then?
Yeah.
Because you're going to have a lot bigger obstacles in your married life if you have children, illness,
think about
money.
Warren, that's really something to fight about.
The makeup conversation can be very good.
Oh my goodness.
Bernie, that joke was made.
Lord.
Was it?
Where were you, buddy? I just thought about that.
I don't know. I tell young women to date conservative. Date Republican dudes. They have better values. They're better. I don't know. I think it's better.
And more
I
fun.
think I'm blushing. All right. When couples aren't arguing over President Trump, they may well be going at it over money. All right. A survey from Bankrate.com reveals 22 million Americans keep all of their bank accounts separate from their spouse or partner. This, as 42% of all Americans admit that knowing someone's credit score would have an impact on their interest in dating them. But only 6% think it's appropriate to ask about their partner's credit early on. The majority of people say you should wait until you've been dating for a few months or are engaged. Meghan McCain, I really want to know your thoughts on this. I knew you were going to say, don't go to me first.
Well, I mean, you're talking about delving into someone's credit score and bank account. I think that's deeply personal, and you should be engaged or, you know, at least in a serious relationship. I'm not married, obviously, but I don't know. I think that's a very personal conversation. But if someone has really bad credit, I guess it could affect you long term. But for me, I don't think that'd be a deal breaker.
I think it's super funny, the thought of getting hot and heavy in the back of the Fiat. You know, when things are progressing, someone going, "What's your credit score? What's your credit score?" 734.
Oh my God.
Where's the buzzer? Where's the bleeper in here? What do you think? I'm interested in what everybody thinks about the shared bank accounts and the isolated bank accounts. Well, I know it's interesting. I mean, I know couples that do both things. You've got to do what works for you. You know, you never really know what's going to work for another couple, what's going on inside their marriage, right? Right? You guys are silent and you're looking at me like you're going to let me sit out.
Bernie's here, thank goodness.
I think it's funny for people getting hot and heavy in the back of a Fiat.
Oh, yeah.
It's a small car.
You don't want to be engaged, get engaged to a deadbeat, and then find out you're engaged to somebody who, you know, essentially is. Has his house, his car repossessed.
Does love mean anything?
I know. What do you think about married people having either bank accounts that are commingled, everything's commingled, or separate? I'm going to go around the couch because no one's answering.
I actually know someone who is in a serious relationship and just found out her partner has extreme student loan debt, and it totally freaked her out about them possibly buying a home and things like that. So I do think if you have, and I've had to talk to her about it quite a few times, and I do think if you have extreme debt of any kind, that is something that you should reveal to your partner.
Absolutely agreed. Joint bank accounts, not until you're married.
Right? No, I'm saying after marriage. That's what this was about. Is do you commingle finances or do you keep it separate?
Commingle. You have to have the trust. You just have to. I mean, otherwise, you might as well just not get married. I mean, that's what it is. You're one entity once you get married. You're a family.
Well, a lot of this obviously historically has changed because you have two-income families, you have two parents who work, and there's two incomes coming into the household. So that has changed this dynamic a lot, even just in the recent decades.
That was such a punt. I mean, you didn't.
I'm letting you know that historically we're looking at a lot of different situations.
More together.
For gosh sake, no, I'm not talking about my personal situation. That's for Kennedy.
Of my mom's generation who would say always have your own money and always have separate accounts. And I think, you know, you can have a joint account, but you should always have some sort of, you know, whether it's investments or a savings account, something that is truly your own.
I agree. You know what? Can I tell you? I agree with that. I actually.
But it's all joint property.
I'm not married, as I said like 10 times.
It depends where you live.
But I would do a separate account where you both could put money into. But I actually think financial security, and honestly, like, I don't need anybody knowing how much I spend on shoes every month. That's between me and, you know, whatever.
All right. Many thanks to Bernard McGurk. Thank you for joining us on this holiday Monday.
It was an honor, actually.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Happy Memorial Day, everybody. We are back live tomorrow, Outnumbered, noon Eastern. Thanks for joining us.